The Balanced Life. The Dinner Date. The restaurant was one of those places that tried too hard. Soft jazz that no one asked for, candles flickering in the recycled wine bottles, and a menu that described every dish like it was applying for a literary prize. The walls were exposed brick, because of course they were. An Edison bulb hung from the ceiling on different lengths of cord, creating shadows that danced across the white tablecloths like nervous energy. Percy Protein sat across from Carla Carbohydrate, fidgeting with the edge of the tablecloth. This was their third date, and the Protein still couldn't quite figure the Carbohydrate out. The table between them was a study in contrast. Percy sighed, a single glass of water with lemon, silverware aligned at perfect right angles, napkin folded precisely on their lap. Carla sighed, 3 different beverages, sparkling water, regular water, and something that looked like it had been mixed from a cocktail menu without regard for flavor and compatibility. Rings of condensation overlapping on the wood. A bread basket already disseminated. Butter wrappers crumbled like tiny surrender flags. "So," the Protein asked, cutting into a perfectly seared piece of white-caught salmon with surgical precision. "Tell me again why you ordered 3 appetizers, 2 entrees, and you already eyeing dessert." Carla grinned. That infectious, slightly manic energy radiated off them like the heat off of fresh bread. Their fork hovered over their plates, plural because the waiter actually had to bring a second small plate to accommodate everything. Because life's short, Percy. Why limit yourself? You can have the pasta and the risotto. You can have the sweet and savory. You don't have to pick just one thing. The pasta in question was a squid ink linguine, dramatically black against the white plate. The risotto was saffron gold, creamy, studded with what the menu had previously called seasonal vegetables from our rooftop garden. There was also a grain bowl of some kind, quinoa, farro, and 3 other things Percy couldn't identify, and a dessert menu already bookmarked at 2 different pages. "But at some point," Percy said carefully, measuring out exactly 1 more bite of salmon, "don't you have to, commit to something? Focus?" The Carbohydrate smiled, flattered for just a second, so quick you might have missed it if you weren't paying attention. But Percy was always paying attention. That was the kind of Protein's whole deal. "I focus," Carla said, a little defensively, gesturing with a piece of bread that sent crumbs scattering across the table. "I just focus on a lot of things, simultaneously." The waiter materialized beside their table like he'd been summoned. His name read Marcus, and he had a kind of world-weary expression that came from several hundreds of first dates that would never become second dates. "How are you doing over here?" Marcus asked, his eyes taking in the chaos of the Carbohydrate side of the table, the rigid order of proteins. "Can I get you anything else? More bread? More structure? Perhaps some existential clarity?" Percy looked up sharply. "Excuse me?" Marcus gestured at the table with his order pad. "It's just, I've been watching you 2 all night. You're not really eating, are you? You're performing eating, like concepts trying to convince themselves that they're real people." The Carbohydrate laughed, delighted. "Oh my God, are you always this philosophical with your tables?" "Only the interesting ones," Marcus said. "And you 2 are definitely interesting. Let me guess. 3rd date. You," he pointed at Percy, "have been calculating the protein to everything else ratio of every dish. And you," he pointed at Clara, "trying to figure out if you can order one of everything on the menu without seeming excessive." "I resent that," the Carbohydrate said, but they were all smiling. "Do you, though?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. Look, I get it. We're all just trying to figure out who we are, right? Some of us do it with therapy, some of us do it with overpriced pasta. The trick is finding someone who balances out the particular brand of crazy. He glanced between them. Jury's still out on whether that's you two. The protein sat down their fork with deliberate precision. Are you always this intrusive? Are you always this defensive? Marcus countered. Relax. I'm just saying maybe stop trying so hard to be exactly what you think you should be and just be. The salmon's getting cold. The pasta's getting gummy. Are you both so busy performing your roles that you're not actually connecting? There was a beat of silence. That was really insightful and also incredibly annoying, Clara said. It's a gift, Marcus agreed. So, dessert, or are we calling it here? Percy and Clara looked at each other. Dessert, they said in unison. Marcus nodded, satisfied. Now we're getting somewhere. I'll bring you the chocolate lava cake and the fruit tart. You can share them. Practice compromise. He walked away, leaving them in the warm glow of the Edison bulbs, surrounded in the wreckage of their attempted perfect date. He's right. He's kind of right, the protein admitted quietly. Yeah, the carbohydrate said, reaching across the table to steal one of Percy's precisely portioned roasted vegetables. He really is. The flashback. The memory came to the carbohydrate later that night, uninvited, as they often did. 7 years old, standing in the middle of the grocery store, holding their mother's hand. Except it wasn't just one mother. It was 3, then 5, then a dozen, all of them pulling in different directions. The store was massive, fluorescent bright, aisles stretching into infinity. Every section called to Carla in a different voice. You can be bread, one version of their mother said, pulling them towards the bakery section, where the smell of yeast and warm promise, comfort, simplicity, tradition. No, pasta, said another, dragging them towards a box of spaghetti and penny in shapes of carbohydrates he couldn't name, each one different possibility of a different country, a different future. Sugar, pure crystalline energy. A third mother held up a bag of white sugar, and Carla could feel the rush of it. Immediate joy, the quick spike of everything all at once. Fiber, complex and sophisticated. The fourth mother banished a box of bran cereal that looked about as appealing as cardboard, but promised depth, substance, staying power. Young Carla had looked down at their hands and watched them split into different forms, simple, complex, refined, whole grain, every possible existence all at once, none of them quite real. The reflection in the freezer case showed a dozen different versions of themselves, all overlapping, all true, none quite solid. Pick one, their father had said. He was simple sugar. Everyone called him Simon, the kind who believed in quick decisions and immediate results. He stood at the end of the aisle, arms crossed, checking his watch. You can't be everything. You'll drive yourself crazy. Look at me. I know exactly what I am. No confusion, no complexity, just pure, immediate purpose. But young Carla smiled at that same manic smile. Why not? Why can't I be everything? Simon sighed the way he'd always did, like the carbohydrate was the problem that would be solved if only they had followed the right formula. Because being everything means never being enough of anything. You'll spread yourself out too thin. You'll burn out too fast or stick around too long. You need to pick a lane. The problem was, being everything meant never quite being enough of any one thing. At school, the carbohydrate was too quick for some friends, too slow for others, too sweet, too bland, too simple, too complex. They'll show up to parties in shift form, depending on who they were talking to. White rice with one group, quinoa with another, straight up candy of kids who just wanted to have fun. No one ever seemed to know the real Carla carbohydrate. Sometimes, late at night, The carbohydrate wondered if there even was a real version to know. The worst part was recess. The other kids would be playing, and Carla would join in, and within minutes they'll be exhausted, or everyone else would be exhausted from trying to keep up with them. The energy came in waves, unpredictable, unreliable. Sometimes the carbohydrate was the life of the party. Sometimes they crashed hard and had to lie down in the nurse's office while everyone else kept playing. "You're too much," one kid had said. "You're not enough," another had said the very same day. Both were true. Neither was fair. The memory faded as the cab hit the pothole. The protein was beside the carbohydrate now, hand resting uncertainly on the seat between them. Close, but not quite touching. "You okay?" Percy asked. "Yeah," Carla lied. "Just thinking." The cab ride. The flower arrangement was wedged between Carla and Percy in the back seat. Lilies and something purple that had Protein picked out after consulting 3 different websites about hospital-appropriate flowers. The cab smelled like air freshener, trying to mask the ghost of 1,000 previous passengers. Outside the windows, the city slid by in streaks of neon and shadow. A late-night donut shop still lit. A gym also still lit, because apparently some people work out at 10:30 on a Tuesday. The contradictions of a city at night. "You know, she's going to make fun of us for this," the carpenter said quietly, watching the reflection in the window, distorted, unclear, like always. The protein adjusted the flowers for the 3rd time. "Probably, but that's that kind of her thing, isn't it? Making fun of us while simultaneously holding us together." "Yeah." Carla's voice was soft. "I didn't realize how much I relied on that until..." They didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. The truth was, no one had seen it coming. Natty Fat, everyone called her Nat, though she preferred her full name, said it had more weight to it. Was the steady one, the reliable one. The one who showed up when you needed them, who listened without judgment, who somehow made everything else feel less chaotic just by being in the room. The idea that Fat could get sick, really sick, hospital sick, had shaken them in ways they weren't quite ready to articulate. "I should have noticed," Percy said suddenly. There were signs. She tried all the time, wasn't absorbing things the way she used to. Her skin looked off. "I should have..." "Stop," the carbohydrate said, and for once their voice was gently instead of frantic. "This isn't about you being vigilant enough. Sometimes things just happen. Sometimes bodies fail, even when we do everything right." The protein looked surprised. "That's very un-you." "Yeah, well," the carbohydrate shrugged, watching a traffic light change from red to green, yellow to red again. "Maybe I'm learning. Maybe Nat being sick is teaching me that not everything can be solved by just being war. Sometimes you have to sit with the hard stuff." The cab driver, who had been silent up to this point, glanced in the rearview mirror. "Your friend's going to be okay?" "Yeah," the protein said firmly. She's going to be fine." "You sound real sure about that." "I am," Percy said, but their hands were gripping the flower stems a little too tightly. The cab pulled up to the hospital entrance, one of these modern buildings that tried to look less depressing with abstract art and lots of windows. It really didn't work. The art looked like someone had sneezed paint onto a canvas. The windows just reflected back their own anxious faces. The carbohydrate paid the driver. The protein had already calculated exact change, but Carla added a bigger tip, because that's what Nat would have done. And the two of them stood there for a moment, looking up at the illuminated windows. "4th floor," Percy said, checking their phone. "Room 447. "Right," the carbohydrate took a breath. "Let's go." They started walking, and for once, the carbohydrate didn't sprint ahead, and the protein didn't lag behind, calculating the most effective route. They just walked together. The hospital room. The room was on the 4th floor, and it smelled like antiseptic and that specific kind of institutional sadness that hospitals can never quite mask. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, that barely perceptible buzz that you didn't notice until you did, and then you couldn't stop noticing. Natty Fat was sitting up in bed, looking pale, but managing a smile when they walked in. The IV in arm was taped down with that medical tape that someone managed to both too sticky and not sticky enough. Her hair was pulled back, no makeup, wearing a hospital gown that somehow still made her look dignified. Behind her, standing by the window, was Oliver Fat, Nat's cousin, though they were close enough that most people assumed that they were siblings. Where Nat was steady and grounding, Oliver was smooth, adaptable, always knowing exactly what to say. The Fat had the quality of making any situation feel manageable, like everything would work itself out if you just gave it time and the right conditions. "Please tell me those aren't carnations," the Fat said weakly, eyeing the flowers. "Lilies," the Protein announced, like they were personally grown them. "And stalix, the purple ones." "Stalic," Oliver said from the window, his voice warm and easy. "For sympathy, someone did the research." "How very on the nose," Nat said, but she was smiling, really smiling. The Carbohydrate set the flowers on the bedside table, suddenly unaware of what to do with their hands. This was the problem of being everyone and everything. You never quite knew which version of yourself to be in a moment like this. Should they be upbeat, energetic, distracting, or quiet, serious, supportive? "Hey," the Fat said gently, reading Carla's hesitation like they always did. "Just be here. That's enough." The Protein moved to the other side of the bed, immediately checking the monitors, the IV drip rate, the chart hanging at the foot of the bed. "Your vitals look stable. Heart rate's good. Oxygen saturation is..." "Percy," Nat interrupted, "I love you, but if you start calculating my albumin levels, I'm going to have Oliver kick you out." Oliver raised his hands. "I'm not kicking out anyone, but maybe we can't turn this into a medical review." The Protein flushed, but stuck back from the monitors. "So," the Fat said, her eyes moving between Percy and Carla, "how was the date?" They exchanged glances. "Complicated," the Protein admitted. "Perfect," the Carbohydrate added. "Disastrous in exactly the way we predicted," Oliver chimed in, settling in the chair by the window like he's been there for hours, knowing the Fat he probably had been. "So, like everything else with you two," Nat shifted in the bed, wincing slightly. Oliver was beside her immediately, adjusting her pillows with practiced efficiency, movement so smooth they seemed almost unconscious. "The doctors say you're stabilizing," Percy said, because the Protein always needed facts, data, something solid to hold on to. The Fat confirmed. "Turns out I just needed some support. Some balance. My levels were off, not enough of the right things, too much of the wrong stress. Funny how that works." "It's not funny at all," the Carbohydrate said quietly. "It's scary as hell." Nat's expression softened. "Yeah, it really is." There was a long moment of quiet. Outside, a cart rattled past in the hallway. Someone's phone buzzed. The monitors beeped their steady rhythm. "I'm glad you're here," the Fat said finally. "All of you, even if you did bring flowers that are going to make the nurses think someone died." "Well," Carla said, the manic energy creeping back into their voice, but softer now, more controlled. "We couldn't let you have all the fun being dramatic." The Fat laughed. It turned into a cough. It was real laughter anyway. Oliver handed her the water without being asked, the glass appearing in his hands like he had conjured it. "You know, I could really use right now," Nat said, after she caught her breath. "What?" they all asked in unison. "A decent meal. This hospital food is trying to kill me faster than whatever brought me here." The Protein immediately pulled out their phone. "I'll find you something balanced. Lean protein, complex carbs, healthy fats." Or, the Carbohydrate interrupted. We could just get whatever sounds good and not overthink it. The fat smiled. That's easy. Knowing smile. Or we could do both. Order a bunch of stuff, share it, and see what works. That's kind of the whole point, isn't it? Nat nodded. That's a plan I can get behind. And as the protein scrolled through the delivery options and the carbohydrates suggested increasingly absurd combinations, and the fat quietly made sure everyone's preferences were actually heard, and Nat provided commentary from her hospital bed, something shifted. Not fixed, exactly, but balanced. You know, the fat said, watching the three of them argue about whether Thai food and pizza could coexist in the same order. This is what I miss most. Not being alone. Just this. All of us being our ridiculous selves together. We're not ridiculous, the protein protested. We're absolutely ridiculous, the carbohydrate corrected. We're perfectly ridiculous, the fat amended. There's a difference. The flowers sat on the bedside table, their perfect stalk catching the fluorescent light. Outside, the city hummed an endless evening song, and in room 447, old friends figured out how to be there for each other, one perfect moment at a time. For now, that was enough.